Yes, we can also hear
But
you.
you can't see me, right? Oh,
Got you, Russ.
I got one of those stupid little things that you put over the screen to, keep people from looking at your computer by accident.
From peeping in on you? Yeah, I get it.
Put over the screen to, keep people from looking at your computer by accident.
From peeping in on you? Yeah, I get it. Oh, someone's got a feedback loop going. That's fun.
It's me. Sorry about that. Hold up.
Okay.
Well, you know what we say, Greg, Life.Church is a high feedback culture.
Hey. Got him.
I had to get the YouTube stuff going so that we don't run into what we ran into last week.
Make sure I mute that.
It appears to be going.
We'll give it just a couple more minutes. I don't think everyone is on yet who's going to be joining us.
Hello, everybody. Greetings from St. Kitts in the Caribbean.
What's up, man? Thank you for joining.
So I have a question. Is a sweet beard required if you're an audio engineer? Is that part of the deal?
That's what it seems to look like.
Caleb, you have no hope, dude.
I just
that's why I'm
decided I'm not shaving until this whole thing's over.
I stay away from audio because of the beard.
I was talking with Brian Clark yesterday, and he has got the it's like the duck hunting beard going on. He's calling it the COVID beard, but it was beastly.
I think the only way I can stay married to my wife is if I do have a clean shave. So I'm one of those that has to shave all the time.
What's up, Jack? Thanks for joining in, man. Appreciate you being here.
Hi. What?
All right, stand by. We got one of our guests trying to join in real quick. Want to get him in here. Fine. Probably give it another 3 minutes or so, and then we'll get rolling.
Cool.
And as you guys join, if you have questions, feel free to throw them in there in the chat, and we'll make sure to get them answered. But if you are joining us, this is the first time for you guys, just a little backstory. So when all this kind of hit the fan and everyone was having to shift into more of a streaming or recording or anything like that, our team kind of got together and decided we would start off by just helping people as much as we can. One of the goals of Life.Church in general is just to support the capital C church. So it's everyone. We give away resources, whatever we can. We try to help in any way possible. So the first thing that we did was we started with a church online thing, just ask anything, answered anything we could. That kind of what spun up this whole thing. And Greg Backus, he's our leader over the whole tech team here at Life.Church, and really gave us a lot of freedom to kind of invite whoever we could and do whatever we wanted to do topics on. So we've been able to hit like lighting for broadcast support, tech support, leadership, and then obviously we have audio. I'm tend to be a little bit more prone to the audio side of things, so I'm excited about this one. We've got some pretty awesome guests that are going to be here. and that are here right now. And I'm not sure if they're all on yet, but I'll just introduce them. So we should have Luke Hendrickson, who's the broadcast mix engineer over at, oh, what's up, Luke? Thanks for joining, man. He's over at Bethel. I know you guys got a project going on right now, so thanks for jumping on with us for a few minutes.
My pleasure.
Yeah, man, it's going to be good. Sam Nafee, he's here. He's our Life.Church director of audio. He does, what all do? You do a lot. You do the Craig Rochelle podcast, but what else are you doing?
My team is responsible for, any content with Craig, all creative media content, worship mixes, broadcast mixes, just anything audio related at Life.Church.
So Sam's an awesome resource. Always wanted to help out. He got a lot of these guys on today, so thank you for contacting us, all those guys, and putting them in contact with us. Jack Nellis, his audio engineer over at Elevation Church. Drew Brashler is the tech director at CCV over in Peoria, Arizona, and he also leads the DBB audio site and channel, and he's a resident X32 expert. So I know we've got some questions for that stuff, and a lot of people are using those consoles. We also have Russ Long, who's with Yamaha Pro Audio. He's joining us. Are you still in Nashville, Russ?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Awesome, man. So thanks for being here. And just so you guys know, these aren't sponsored in any way. Like, nobody's trying to sell you anything if you're here. This is really people coming together, just offering resources, and that's what everyone wants to give. And so everyone's here just supporting. I've known Russ for a long time. Russ he threw me my first bone, I think, ever, when I moved to Nashville, and just kind of let me come hang out and see what he did, and tuning systems, mixing for a tour back in the day. So I was pretty stoked to see Russ here. I haven't talked to Russ in like 10 years. So thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, glad to be here.
And then we also have Adam Taylor, who's out at Central Church in Vegas. He's also on the MixU team. So I'm pumped for him to be here. And then we should also have Matt Rifino from, he's the NBC Today Show music mixer. So you guys have got some ears and some knowledge to hear any questions you have and to pick their brains. So we'll go ahead and get going with it. Thank you guys again for all being here. Like I said, I'm pumped for this. I know that this is very different from what a lot of our usuals are. I know a lot of guys here probably are used to mixing for a house. They're probably mixing for the room. They're dealing with room reflections, different things like that. And we're all having to shift to mixing maybe more intentionally for online. And everyone has different skill levels. Everyone has different abilities in terms of what their resources have been or their just building setup is. So we're kind of going to jump into it. We're going to kind of we have church guys here. We've got just some other professionals here. And I know I want to honor Luke's time too, because he, like I said, they're in the middle of mastering a project right now. So I just kind of want to kick it off. Sam, you were talking a little bit earlier today about something that we deal with, and I know a lot of other people are dealing with in terms of like recording audio, video, but can you articulate it better for Luke specifically to kick it off?
Yeah, Luke, we kind of understand you're the kind of expert on broadcasts in the box. So mixing broadcasts out of a DAW. Specifically, the question we had was, how do you deal with lip sync or syncing that audio back to video with all the latency that's happening in a DAW?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I am the DAW guy probably in this group. About 10 years ago at Bethel Church, we started mixing in a DAW just because it gives unlimited power and it's way cheaper and it's way more portable, and you can multi-track record at the same time. You get virtual sound check. There's like no downsides to it, and you just save so much money. The sync problem is not really a problem. In our world, we've actually found that video has more latency than audio does. Video is slower than audio. Even at a maxed out buffer setting in my DAW, which, you know, I'm a huge fan of maxing everything out because I don't care about speed, I care about stability. And so, and because of that, all we have to do is put a delay plugin on your output, and it's as easy as a free delay plugin. You can sync it up to whatever you like. If you have a video problem, like if the video is too fast, Then you do a frame delay unit. They make these rack mounted units that you can do a frame delay, or if you have like software like OBS or something for free, you can just run your video through there and put a delay plugin on your video.
You have anything else with that, Sam?
That's great. That answers a lot of questions, I think. That's awesome.
Have you guys that are here right now been dealing with that and having to, and this, you know, you can talk in the chat, anything else? Have any of the other guys, for the guests specifically, had to address any of that or been hearing any kind of like questions along those lines? I know we at
CCB, we have had to delay our audio in our broadcast console that we have. We have a broadcast console that's doing our broadcast mix, but then we also have a mixer that's specifically dedicated to our live stream. And so that is just how we're fading in some like background music into stream and playing the videos. And so we've actually had to apply a little bit of frame delay on our Yamaha QL1 that we have in there. But yeah, it kind of varies from week to week sometimes, but we've dialed it in pretty much exact now.
Very cool. Yeah, we've had our share of latency issues here between streaming and other things like that. Whew, that was kind of my introduction and when I joined the Life.Church team. So that was fun times. So I'm real interested in latency and how to fix those problems. But kind of just to keep on with the questions with churches and whatnot, for any of you guys, has this season changed, you know, your workflow of week to week, how you're kind of attacking either a weekend? I know right now we've kind of talked about this, Life.Church, we haven't done a live weekend since this whole thing kind of started. We've been really being able to shift our weekends up in the week and pre-record, doing more things like that, really just to handle a lot more of Pastor Craig's things that he needs to do. He's doing a lot of global leadership network stuff. And so we're kind of just putting all of our efforts into spending a couple of days of attacking the weekend earlier in the week, just to give him a break and rest or whatever. Have you guys had to pivot or been able to pivot at all? What's that been looking like for you? And any of you who are our guests, feel free to join in. Maybe Adam?
Well, I can say I've been talking to a lot of church audio people. I don't directly work with the church, but I know the whole webcast thing has been second priority for most churches, because it's usually something that's just streamed by people who are missing a service because they're sick or they're traveling and they want to catch their church service online. But now with everybody watching online, it's become a high priority, and everybody that I'm interacting with are trying to up the ante of their webcast. And a lot of people hadn't worked on it that much because it was kind of a second thought. And now everybody's working, you know, as hard as they can to try to make the quality of that as good as possible and try to let everybody experience a church service at home that with as close as, I mean, obviously it's not going to be the same thing, but as close as it can be to the same thing from home.
Yeah, which kind of leads, you know, it's kind of a leading question then, you know, how are you guys doing that? So has it changed your workflow in terms of like, are you mixing? I know we're mixing in the room still to kind of get people on stage. Maybe that's a better way to ask a question. We're mixing in the room still to kind of give the band and you know, the worship teams like that experience, like we're live, and that just to give them as much life as we can. But we're intentional about our stream for reasons, you know, that we're so heavy online. But have you guys had to make a change at all for that stuff?
Adam, hop in there. Talk about how you guys moved your console.
Yeah,
you look like you want to just jump in.
I'll jump in here, guys. Yeah, going back to kind of what Russ was saying is that before we were like a physical church with multiple locations, and online was one of the locations. And now it feels like for a lot of churches that the whole mindset has changed to where we're an online church that also has physical locations. And that's kind of going to be the way of the future for a lot of people. And we were journeying down that road for the last year. We've really tried to step up our online, like the way it looks, the way it sounds, the content we're having live hosts, people interact with, you know, people watching online, trying to really track analytics, just seeing where it's going rather than just throwing a file on Saturday night on Vimeo and letting it play. So that's kind of been the journey for the last year. But now when this all happened, we were like, all right, we were starting to prepare for this. And it felt like we had a lot of like right people on the bus to try to make this switch right when we needed to. And so the first week, I think I told Sam about this a little bit, but we moved our front of house console to like an offsite location backstage, and just to be isolated away from live drums, feeling the room, just to have a totally different experience. I've never mixed broadcast ever. I've done Pro Tools mixes, but I've never mixed on a console through reference monitors. Besides like line checking through headphones and doing little rough demos and stuff, I've never tried to pull off a real mix on a console. And so moving that console we moved it backstage in our hallway and set up a little isolation area. Kind of gave me the freedom to not look at the band, just look at the multi-view, listen to my headphones, listen to my monitors, and see what it felt like without hearing acoustic drums in the room. Kept the PA off, didn't use any room mics, just tried something totally different, using like my reverb special effects to create that sound. And then about 2 weeks after doing that, I had an extra console that's like a low-level console. It has a really low channel count. We're like, let's start getting this ready for what is going to be phase 2 of this, is when we're going to reopen. And who knows how long that's going to be, if that's going to be a month, 2 months, 3 months. We don't want to be in a position where our leadership's telling us, hey, we're opening tomorrow, and we don't have anything in place. Like, we don't have a console at front of house. All of our cameras are on risers all over the chairs. Our lighting rig has a trim of like 12 feet above the stage right now. Like, none of that stuff's going to work if we need to open up immediately. And so the last 3 weeks, we've been transitioning to how can we set this up to be ready to roll when we go live. So now we've created almost a mini television studio upstairs. Like, our facilities team is just incredible. They've cleared out a bunch of walls. They've built a whole new studio. They laid flooring and did work lights. We had integrators come in, electricians, and pull up the fiber we needed, and SDI lines, Cat5, all the network crap. And we're kind of getting it going, which is what we have. And now I feel like we're at a place that where when we're ready to go live, we're going to be able to drop in and do this without having to, the night before, move everything back into place. And then one thing's going to suffer: your live experience, your online experience, when you're trying to, do one with all of the gear and all of the people. So I hope that kind of answers where we're at a little bit, but it's been a little bit of just figuring stuff out one day at a time, making a lot of changes.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Sam.
You mentioned some crowd mics and at first not using them. I know that's something like in our mixes, we have a ton of crowd mics in our room and love to use them. I'd be curious to hear what other guys are doing. Like, Luke, what's your take on crowd mics right now? Like, if there's nobody in the room, getting the room sound, what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are known for live worship, and when there's no audience, it definitely changes things. So you have to consider what is important in your mix. So our services haven't changed from a performance standpoint or even an engineering standpoint. They're still truly live. We never pre-record anything ever, as far as like our Sunday services. And so we have still a full band on the normal stage, normal microphones, the same gear setup. But the difference is, there's a lack of an audience. You're trying to figure out, how do I fill in that space? Because there's definitely a gap there sonically. And you can, hopefully, if you have great tone coming from your band, the tone fills in the space. You don't feel like you're lacking anything. And so we actually are not using any audience mics at all, because there is no audience. So they're actually completely muted. But in a normal live setting, when there's an audience here, we have 6 shotguns placed throughout the room, up high, pointing down into the audience in different locations. So it gives tries to give a broad perspective of what's happening in the room.
Jack, I know you guys are still, or you went back to being live on the weekends. Are you guys, to kind of piggyback off Sam's, are you using crowd mics right now to interact with people, maybe make it a little more ambient sounding? What are you guys doing?
Yeah, right now they're still up. We have I think 10 throughout the whole room, but right now we pulled back I think about half of them, and we'll blend in audience mics just maybe for the sermon, because that's still live as well, just to kind of give just like sense of space. But as far as the band, they're pretty much ducked through all the worship, and then again when pastor's on stage, it's just him and his headset. So we use the audience mics to fill in the gap, so you're just not hearing a raw headset.
That's great. At Life.Church, like it's a big part of what we do. So we have like kind of two different purposes. We have room mics and then we have crowd mics. So it's kind of worth, I think, talking about the difference. We have a lot of shotguns that are like, up high, pointed at the audience. We also have a couple pairs of large diaphragm condensers turned around, facing back towards the PA, kind of like in a traditional studio space where you'd have, like, if you set up a drum kit, you'd have some room mics on the other, like a stereo pair of room mics on the other side of the room. We're doing that. So we're using those mics quite a bit and trying to get some ambience that way. So we're not necessarily pushing up reverbs. We're still using some of our room space. We've even at times ducked the band and the vocals in the house, left the drums up full volume to try to get a big roomy drum sound. So that's one thing we're doing with crowd mics.
Is there anything else that you can, I think, say on that right now? Like I don't think a lot of guys would think about how to use their crowd mics right now, Sam. So are there any other tips for that, or just in general, what the purpose of the crowd mic would be in this time where there's not, like, what's that actually mean for someone who's like, I've got crowd mics, I don't know what the point of them right now are?
I've got one repurposing that we did, which was to turn them around, because we have some people on stage behind the pastor kind of preaching with him. So instead of having the shotguns above pointing down, we took them down to the floor pointing back to pick up some of what's going on there. So you get a little bit more feel of everybody on the stage together.
Right. Matt Rifino, I see you in here, man. Do you guys, are you mixing completely dry with your environment right now while we're on the topic of room mics, different things like that? Or do you throw something in there to give a little bit more space to what you're mixing in? We'll come back to it. Or if you
Matt muted? I think Matthew's muted.
Might be muted.
Oh, there we go. All right.
There you
sorry.
are.
All right. Sorry. First
Perfect,
time on Zoom. Sorry, guys. Nice to meet everyone.
Hey, thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So I use 6 mics, 6 audience mics. I'm in surround sound, so I put 2 close to the stage, and they're in my front speakers. I put 2 in the middle of the audience. They're in between, and then 2 in the back facing the PA, and they're my rear speakers. And I add them in after I've done my mix. So I'll do my mix, add the crowd in, and EQ them to my mix. So I can tighten up the bottom end, the low mids, all that stuff, clean it up, compress it, and then put them on a VCA, and they're pretty much sitting at 0 through most of the song. And if the crowd participation, I'm riding them up pretty hot, +2, +3. It's getting up there.
That's really cool. Sam, you got anything else on that you can drive?
No, that's really cool. I would just love to hear more about mixing and surround, but that's probably for another time. I don't think a lot of us
you don't want to do it if you don't have to, because everyone's TV down mixes it. So if you're not careful, you can have a mess on your hands. So you kind of want to almost do like 3-1 with ambience and crowd in the rears. For TV, if you're doing a DVD, like if I'm mixing a DVD, then you can be a little more creative with it.
That's awesome.
That's fascinating. That's really cool. Well, kind of to keep on going with all of this, Adam, what I appreciate about, you sharing is that every day is a learning experience. And I think there's sometimes a misperception of larger churches got it all. We already have thought about everything. And the reality is there's a lot of times we're figuring things out as it's coming up. And so I think it's encouraging just to share that it's not like everyone's got all of it covered. And I've been able to be at a few different churches of different sizes, and it's all kind of been the same. It's all been like that. Like you kind of adjust to what you need in the time. I know it's an audio talk, but like I know Zach Kimmery could tell us there's a lot of things. You have the infrastructure pretty much set, and then you've got to change and you got to flip things. And Sam and I were on doing some tests yesterday, and we had to make changes within a couple minutes of just doing this pretty much the exact same thing. So I appreciate you telling us that, man, and it's encouraging for a lot of people. But kind of expand off that and having to adjust in the moment. With all that said, how are you guys operating right now? Are you all operating off of a broadcast console, or are you pivoting and using your front of house console as your broadcast or is anything like that happening? Or I'm kind of interested to hear from all of you guys on what that looks like.
I've been in the box since 2005 on Icon, so I completely mix in Pro Tools.
Okay.
It's been that way. I've been mixing Pro Tools since the late 90s, but exclusively since like the mid 2000s. And I'm on an Icon, and everything stays within the box, no analog at all, other than my Grace mic pre's.
Awesome. Adam, had you guys, what were you doing prior?
Prior we had a broadcast console in the back in our video control room, and it was an unmanned position on the weekend. So we actually were live, but the way it was sent was there was basically post fader stereo stem groups of from being front of house being fed to broadcast, and it was broken down like I don't remember exactly, but it was like drums, bass, guitars, tracks, keys, vocals, crowd mics, media. We have a VIP bus, which is like pastor mics, stuff like that. That's all going down, all post fader from front of house. So whatever is being, ridden at front of house, that's affecting the broadcast mix in the back. So we'd kind of set things to a level where it needed to be. We would limit it super hard, get it EQ'd, kind of just sounding decent, better than a board mix, a left and right coming out. And this is adding in all the crowd mics, extra reverbs. There's a few little like reverb buses we do that we call a PA simulator. Adds all that stuff back into it. And that's what would go all to all the video record decks, get embedded to the SDI router and all that, the video stuff. So now, since then, I'm taking individual inputs and doing an actual broadcast mix. Everything's routed over Dante to front of house, to monitors, to broadcast. And then we have like a production desk, if you will, that routes like mics for hosts, people being interviewed, taking prayer requests, cutting away from what's going on stage. And so, what you said about learning as I go, I've been in the weeds a lot more in the past couple of weeks. I think a lot of us have, of just, minutes before the band's gonna get on stage, I'm working on slides for Pastor Judd or changing some graphics with our team or just running around like crazy, and I can't get in the right headspace to mix. And I know that kind of sounds a little diva-ish, but if I really want it to be great and I want to give it my best, I can't be exhausted, and my headspace is just in this other world of pulling cables and making sure graphics are correct. So what I've been doing is just letting tracks live roll through Dante upstairs, capturing everything. As soon as everyone goes home and the building's empty, I can play back through the desk. I can mix everything. I can set up all the automation with snapshots for auto-tune and automating crowd mics, and the reverb sends our PA simulator. And then that gets sent back out through the mastering chain and just records the left and right. That goes straight to Dropbox, and the video guys grab it and we'll sync it up with the footage. So it's a little bit easier for me in this workflow. That's not going to be the case when we go live again, and whenever that's going to happen, but we'll adapt then. But with how busy I've been, that's the best solution for me right now, is to just let it roll upstairs while the band's here. When they're done, I can go back and do the edit and then run everything through console and mix it up here on my own time. And I've got about 2 days to do that if we're recording on Tuesday or Wednesday. And then we're kind of doing all the final edits on Friday and proofing everything before it gets uploaded on Saturday.
Luke, what's that look like for you guys? What's that been? Has you typically take a broadcast console? Are you in Pro Tools? What's that looking like for you?
Yeah, so we have a front of house engineer, we have a monitor engineer, and a broadcast engineer. So there are 3 engineers for every service. And that way each person can focus on their job and not have to try to multitask. The wider you stretch yourself, the lower your quality is. So being able to focus on something is going to achieve a higher quality result. Broadcast is this room actually that I'm in right now. It's side stage. It's in a quiet room. There's no noise of any kind. And we just mix in the DAW 100% in the box. Zero output processing whatsoever. It's 100% live. We never go back and remix. And we have a kind of an in-house system here, which it goes into a console actually just for preamps, and then goes into Apogee Symphonies, which are the A to D conversion, goes into the DAW, mixes 100% in the box, and then it's sent over to Video World and is encoded with video stuff. But we also have a mobile rig, which is a similar deal. It's a laptop. It's a MacBook Pro. We've got a MADI interface, and so one digital cable gets us 64 channels, and we can multi-track record and live mix, and it all fits in a backpack. And you get the best tools you could possibly imagine, and it's all in a backpack, and it's super cheap, it's mobile, and it records at the same time. So we have two rigs, the house rig and then the travel rig.
That's really good. And that's good advice for folks who might, you have your front of house setup, you might be running on a really good console. You might have a great room, but you haven't moved into the broadcast space yet or recording of anything like that. And it's that easy, right? Get a good powered laptop and take your pick at what you want to record with. And then just start there. And there's so many things out there. I know a lot of guys, like I said earlier, use the X32. So Drew, you probably could talk to that a little bit. If to piggyback off that, what would that even look like? You know, a lot of guys are using the X32. They need to record, or they want to just be able to pull down maybe what happened in the room for a pre-recording or something like that. What would that workflow look like? To just piggyback off that point that Luke made.
Yeah, so the X32 is in an interesting setup because just out of the box stock, it comes with the X USB card built into it. So you can actually multi-track record all 32 channels right off the board. So for the churches that are using the X32, just plugging in a computer via the USB. Some of the older versions of it have a FireWire, so you can choose which one you want. But being able to take that and do it in post if you're not in a good situation as far as your room or monitoring situation for recording your services. At CCV, we're using the Avid Venue Profile, so a little bit different console. And our front of house is a D show, so just the larger version of it. But our broadcast console is married to the preamp settings that we use off the front of house. So we still have to have a front of house engineer sitting up there, even though we don't actually turn on our PA in our room. Our stage is now in the round. So we have the drums and the vocals. And so it's been interesting playing with vocal mic patterns to reject the drums and the vocal mics. But our workflow for CCV has changed a lot in that we used to just have our broadcast console and we were just printing the broadcast mix directly to the video and marrying that to send out to our online experience. At CCV, we have 10 campuses in total, so we are a multi-site. So our church is used to watching, a live preacher in Peoria, but on a video screen at their campus. But now we are actually taking a multi-track recording off of our venue profile, taking that into Pro Tools, doing a little bit of auto-tune on the vocals. And then we actually take all of those files, all those multi-track files back into our venue profile and do the full mix down on that. And then that gets mastered through our studio using Ozone. And then we actually print that to the video in Adobe Premiere. So our workflow at CCV has changed a lot. But yeah, if there's any specific questions on the X32 on better ways of getting audio quality out of that, I'm happy to answer some things about that.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you guys have any of those questions, make sure to put them in the chat. Jack, what are you guys doing? Is it similar? You got your front of house monitors and broadcast, or are you taking the front of house mix? What's that look like for you guys right now?
Yeah, so I mean, really, when you switch, nothing's changed from people being there. So it's front of house, monitors, broadcast, but we actually have one more position. So in our broadcast room, and it's all independent, and we have our own split, everything, so own racks. But our SD5, that mix is being sent to like a production console, and that's the SD11. And so there's a guy back there who's monitoring levels, and like all the other online content too. But that's one thing that we've been messing around with, is just trying to get the like volume of our whole experience just as loud as we can get it before, you know, it clips or does anything. And we've actually been having a guy in the back ride the broadcast mix just to get it as loud as we can throughout the whole thing, and then monitoring back through the embedder. So that's one thing that we've started doing that wasn't like in play before all of this, and it seems to be working pretty well. You know, we really have to monitor what the embed feed is, because if we're getting it hot, you start mixing low end hotter or anything, it could pass through our L2 and clip it. But I'd say that's the only thing that's different from like what Luke is doing and everything.
That's cool. And we had a question, I think, on YouTube, asking, let's see, well, like what equipment's needed, would you guys say, to get high quality sound on their stream? Is that using, you know, Dante, Maddie? What equipment do you think? And let's say bare minimum. Luke, is that kind of your fly pack that you're kind of talking about? What would you guys suggest to kind of answer that question for someone who's looking to, okay, I'm going to make a purchase, but I need it to be high quality, I need it to be high definition to go into a good stream or recording or whatever it looks like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I might sound crazy, but I don't see any downsides to using a DAW for your live broadcast mix. Everything is a win and there are no losses. The most common argument that would come with doing a DAW is, I don't have faders. Well, buy a USB MIDI controller with a bunch of faders, buy 10 of them if you want to, and you can have as many faders as you want. So that's a super easy fix, and those are $50 each. So the cost to get in, it's a laptop, it's a DAW, Logic is $200. It's an interface, which if you're doing an X32, that looks like a USB cable, some speakers, and a quiet room. And so and some plugins. So your cost is going to be less than $5,000 easy. $5,000 would be extremely generous. If you're on a budget, you could do this for less than $1,000, and you would have a world-class mix that could beat any SD console, any whatever console, because you just have the unlimited power of a DAW. So I would definitely recommend going in that route, and it's portable and multi-track record. So if you ever want to do anything in post, you can do that as well. So yeah,
I just want to. I'd like to add to that, because I think you're right that you can get a world-class mix with the DAW, no doubt, but I don't think your reliability is quite up there with the console. A DAW is more likely to crash than a console, and I just think you need to make sure, if you're doing that you have a form of redundancy built in to where you're taking a stereo mix from front of house or something. So if your DAW happens to crash, you can switch over to an alternate mix instead of having to wait to restart your computer. I've been involved with a lot of TV award shows that were mixed with the DAW, and we always had that built in to where if something happened, we could immediately switch over and we wouldn't have to wait for a complete reboot before our audio got back online.
Yeah, I've done about 3,000 plus shows directly in a DAW over the last 15 years live, and never went down once.
I would second that. My DAW is rock solid. The
Yeah.
key to that is never do any software updates, never change anything with hardware or software, and it's guaranteed to be rock solid. We've been doing it for 10 years, and it has been so incredibly stable. But guys, I'm so sorry. I got to run. I only had a short 30 minutes, so it's been so good to partner with you guys. So have a great day.
Luke. I appreciate you, man.
Luke, thanks, bro.
We can talk to that too. Actually, at Life.Church, we run 2 sources basically. So I love that we kind of got here. Sam, can you talk about that a little bit more? What our setup looks like?
Yeah, I mean, we're super fortunate to be able to do both. So we have, you can see there's console behind me. That's kind of like the brain of our audio network. So it has master control of preamps and everything. But we also have a music mix happening in a DAW out in our studio. So we have both, and the goal is that they sound really similar. Like the broadcast desk is doing all the routing. It's spitting out all the feeds to campuses. It's obviously not right now, but in a typical environment, it's spitting out all those feeds. It's mixing Pastor Craig. It's doing all the crowd mics and everything. But it's also doing a music mix. But we have a dedicated music mix happening where that one guy's job is all he's doing is focusing on getting a great music mix. And we spit that back out over Dante, and we do sim live. So meaning like even on a normal weekend when church is meeting, like church online is like one service behind. So we have to our video recorder, we can record up to 16 audio channels. So we're recording the mix from the broadcast desk, and we're also recording the mix from the DAW at the same time. And our church online team has the ability to just quickly pick a mix. And whichever one is better, or if one goes down or something doesn't work, we have two options and built-in redundancy that way. But the beauty of the DAW is like can't be understated. Like I think if you're trying to if you're a church and you're here and you're trying to get in on the ground floor and try to like, we have a band, we're doing a mix, we want it to be high quality, HD, as the question said, like a DAW is the fastest way to get there. And even something like Logic with stock plugins is going to get you, can get you the loudness, can get you the quality. It's all about fundamentals. It's not about what tool, it's about how you use the tool. So we do both. We believe in both heavily.
Yeah, that's good.
With those churches that are trying to upgrade their HD camera that's using a room microphone sitting on top of the camera and trying to improve that quality and actually get their broadcast mix off of their X32, for instance, into their web stream. Blackmagic has a couple different products that can help marry those two things together, like the Ultra Studio or the Blackmagic web presenter, or even the A10 Mini that they just released. Any of those products are going to help marry the audio along with the video feed that you're getting from your HD video camera, and actually get that audio in quality increased off of just doing a room microphone off the top of your camera.
Yeah, that's good. There's a lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of ways to get this happening for relatively inexpensive, like Luke said, and everyone else has kind of mentioned. But I know like Jack mentioned it. I think Adam mentioned it. And then I know Sam and I talked about it too. And some folks in the chat talked about any tips on mixing live for broadcast for consistency with high levels without losing life in the mix. And then someone kind of second to that. I think
talking about loudness, right?
Loudness, like what's that look like? I think your baseline is like what you just said, Sam. Start with the basics. Like gain structure is huge. Make sure that but can you kind of get off on that topic and see where we can take it from there? And because there's a lot of people talking about this, and I know that it's pretty important to us too to be really consistent in what that level looks like for us.
I think it starts with having a target. Like, what are we trying to get to? Are we trying to get to like an album level master? Or are we trying to match more of like Netflix kind of style levels? I think there's a lot of opinions and a lot of ways you can go. I'd be curious to hear what Matt Rifino is doing on the Today Show. Like, what do you look at level wise?
Level wise, our broadcast is like -22. I mix a lot hotter. I'm mixing at like -10. I trim my master fader back 5 dB, and that puts my broadcast mixer. So basically he can put me up at about 0. We like to have the music a little bit hotter than the dialogue. But really the approach that I've taken the last 15 years or so is I look at it as like a funnel, right? You got a band with 64 channels that day, right? So you got to get 64 channels down to 2 little speakers. You got to funnel it in there. So my channels feed buses. Right, I got drums, bass, guitar. Every instrument's got buses with 2 or 3 or 4 faders with doing different things. They then feed what I call groups, which is all my drum and bass buses feed a drum and bass group. All my melody instruments feed a melody group. All my vocals buses feed a vocal group. Then they feed the mix group, which then feeds mastering. Every one of those is doing about a dB of compression on it. Drums and bass, melody, vocal, and then the mix bus. So I'm compressing 4 dB, 5 dB, 6 dB at various times, but they're all pushing and pulling off each other. So nothing ever has to work a lot. So then by the time I hit my limiter, I can have my limiter at -10 and it won't be doing much limiting. Occasional peaks, and it's loud and punchy, but if you're going to do a soft piano intro, you're not going to lose it with the crowd. You'll hear it right up there. You know,
to clarify, when you said -10, you threw out those numbers. We're talking about LUFS, right?
Yeah, well, we still have
LKFS?
it. It's the Dolby quotient. We still have the old school Dolby meters. Our control room was built in 2006. And we're about to redo it again soon. I'm actually switching from a DigiDesign Icon to a Lavo with a bunch of UAD servers and Wave servers, and then my plugin, my HDX3 systems as plugin servers too. So, but yeah, we're still on the Dolby -22. Dolby is like dialogue. So when talent's talking, they're about there. We'll get the music up to like -19, -18. We'll push it.
Yeah, because like similar, or at least what we find here is similar numbers on the meter, music versus dialogue. Like if you have, like we shoot for -18 dialogue and -18 music, the music's going to sound quieter, right?
Yes.
Like we shoot for, like we're doing the same thing where our music mix is up closer to -12, -10, where that dialogue might peak -16, -18.
I've noticed when I remix, because I remaster, I should say. I never remix unless the artist really has an issue. We'll remix it for the West Coast feed or the BNet. But when I master for the web, I kind of go off of YouTube. So I go -13. So I relay the 2 channels of audio after the interview with talent. And I've noticed that even keeping the talent there, I can still bring up my music and you still feel like you want more sometimes, especially softer intro, acoustic guitar and vocal. The band hasn't started going. You've got that thing where talent is talking. They're interviewing the artist. They're ba 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 going, and then the music kicks in, and you don't want it to feel like it shrinks. You want it to feel like. But then, how do you do that when it's a soft ballad? So you have to ride your master fader if you have to there, or for the web, sometimes I'll automate the top up a little bit if I have to. So this way I'm not compressing and limiting, and it's this block of sound, killing your ears. It's still got some life.
Do you guys use a true peak limit? What's your ceiling?
They don't process it once it leaves us. So whatever we send, it is what it is. I mean, I've AB'd from a million different sources. We even had people record it at different affiliates around the country and send it to me. They don't compress anymore. They don't change anything else. They're not, my broadcast mixer has a bus compressor on, but he's got a separate setting for music. So he'll flip over to his other setting on the cal rec. And really, unless I'm getting out of control, the crowd is really working, it's not going to really hit it.
Awesome.
That's really cool. This conversation, I never thought about that stuff. Man. Go ahead.
For those
what were you saying? Go ahead, Drew. Sorry.
All right. For those of you who have the X32, open up your effects rack and dial in your precision limiter is what it's called. It's basically going to be your mastering limiter that you can insert on your stream feed. And then that will give you the ability of setting your output gain to be a certain level that's not going to be clipping your streaming device. And then you can set your input gain to actually get that level up to the area that you want it to. And so you can get a lot of really good compression via this limiter without it really affecting the sound or the tonality and really killing the life of the mix. So go into your effects rack, go into effects rack 5 or wherever you want to, and insert that precision limiter on your stream feed. And that will really help you dial in some good sound.
That's cool. That's a great tip. And kind of talking about effects racks, getting into all that, what's the signal flow for you guys look like getting into all this stuff? So talking about compression, EQ, what are you kind of using to stack to maybe get to that nominal level or prevent from getting out of control, like Matt, what you were just saying? Any of you guys can kind of talk to this, and I know you guys have probably different ways that you do it too, so anyone want to speak into that?
I know for me, it's a lot of little stages of compression. I never, I've got some parallel stuff and some distorted stuff, and that stuff that's working really hard, but that's all just added in just in little bits. That's more to like kind of just put a hug around everything, give it a kiss. But all my compression, again, is in stages. Drums and bass, they're compressing a dB or two. Just with the compressor, the instruments, maybe a dB, during a guitar solo or something. The vocals, maybe when the background vocals and the lead are working together, and then the mix bus, a dB and a half, all just compression, and then limiting EQ, tape saturation, and your limiter right at the end. And if you do it in stages, none of them ever have to work hard.
That's really good.
Yeah, I want to add to that. I mean, I think that's your key to getting a mix that still feels dynamic and still feels like there's interaction happening between the band members. That multi-level, that staging really helps bring the whole mix together without it ever feeling like it hits a brick wall at any point. There's still breath, but yet it's controlled.
Yeah, I notice a lot of guys, their input channels are too hot. So they're already sort of hurting themselves by not giving them the headroom to let it breathe. If you let it breathe, don't have your faders up so hot, start your faders a little lower, have your buses a little lower. It all starts to build and build and build. You're never going to get against the wall. As soon as you get against that wall, you're there. It doesn't sound good. It doesn't feel good. You don't know why it doesn't sound good or doesn't feel good. It just doesn't, So if you let everything breathe more, it'll feel louder.
Yeah. That's really good. Any of you other guys, Sam, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
No, that's all great. I'm trying to catch some of these questions down here. There's a lot of questions happening in the chat.
I can just add something real quick. I know there's a lot of people who are creating their broadcast mix from their front of house console. And if they have the ability to set up a separate mix, I know that'll translate better, just because there's certain stage volume, there's certain things that are louder in the room, and if they can compensate for that by doing a matrix mix, not a pre-fader mix, still a post-fader mix, so it captures all their movement and the rides they're doing during the songs, but yet if there's a loud drum kit on stage, they're able to push the drums a bit more in the broadcast mix, so they makes up for what the people are losing for not being in the room when the mix is happening.
Also, one other thing I totally didn't think of, but the most important thing, you can compress and do all that stuff, but if you're not high passing and low passing stuff, there's a lot of energy there just eating up your headroom. You'll never get loud. If you're not high passing and low passing things where they need to be, you've lost 10 dB of headroom right out the gate, from your PA, from drum subs, from everything else that's happening in every mic.
Yeah, I think we can put in all of the processing and all the compressors and limiters and EQ, but if your source doesn't sound good, or your mic placement isn't correct, or the microphone choice for that source isn't correct, it's never going to sound good. So, starting with the basics of mic placement or tuning a drum, maybe the drum needs to have heads replaced. Well, how do we do that? Well, maybe talk to your drummer and get those heads replaced and spend a little bit of really low cost money. And maybe you switch out a drum microphone for something that's slightly different. And getting those dialed in the beginning and fixing it at the source is going to do miles and miles of stuff in your mix once you're actually getting into the EQ and getting into the compression and the limiting. So starting at the source is really going to be what's going to help your mix the most.
Yeah, that's really good. Starting with the basics. I do want to hit on, I know that Sam's a great, just from my interaction with him, and I know a lot of these other guys as well. Sam's a great studio engineer. He's also an awesome front of house engineer, running things live. Specifically, I've been able to sit next to Russ while he's mixing live, and it's awesome. He's a phenomenal engineer, but he also does a ton of recording stuff. Russ, what changes when you go from I'm mixing a band, I'm on, it's a live room, this is how I'm mixing, your approach to that, and how do you go from that headspace to changing it to now I'm mixing for a stream or a record or, a pre-recorded anything. What are the differences in what that looks like that you could kind of give some tips to guys who have been the front of house guy and now they're having to think of using a matrix to mix for, online or for a recording or something like that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is your end results generally your goal is the same. You're trying to create a great sounding mix. If you're mixing live, you're really at the mercy of the space you're in, which and you don't have any control of that. So, if you're in a studio and you're recording, you're generally in a far more controlled space, and you also have the ability to move the drum set to a different place in the room, or you have the ability to change the configuration based on the sound you're trying to capture. But in a live situation, you're at the mercy of the venue and how that room sounds and where everybody is on stage, because it's not like you're going to move stuff around during the middle of a show. But the key, I think, is listening. The problem is, and a lot of times guys have a hard time going from studio to stage or from stage to studio because they get used to working in a certain way. And I think like the studio guys, the biggest challenge they have when they go mix a live show, they're used to being able to really go slowly and spend time finessing the sound. And in reality, if somebody is, and this is true for a broadcast mix as well as a live mix, if you've got the vocal sitting right and you've got it sounding good and sitting right in the mix, 90% of the people are going to think that's a good mix. So you can spend all day working on the band, but if you've got that vocal 4 dB too low or 4 dB too hot, and you're trying to tweak and get the ratio between the bass guitar and the kick drum right, then people are going to think it's a bad mix, and it doesn't matter how long you work on that. So I think, one of the biggest things people do is they don't go to the vocal first, because the vocal's what 90% of the people notice first. I think in live sound, people make a mistake sometimes, especially younger guys, of compressing too much. Live sound is meant to be dynamic, and you can be real loud at times and it not seem overly loud if there's dynamics, and it goes soft sometimes too, where if it's just the same volume all the time, it can be really fatiguing. But that's a big difference, because I think on broadcast, especially when you're mixing for the web, people are often listening on their phones or their laptops. So you can't have the dynamics there, because if you're going up and down, all of a sudden the sound goes away or comes back. So I think the medium of broadcast, especially like I said, web broadcast, yields itself to being far more compressed and far more consistent. Those are really kind of general observations.
Yeah, for sure. But and kind of just ask you another question real quick. You're a console guy. You work for a console company. We obviously like your console because it's sitting behind Sam, and it's a beast. And one question we did get beforehand was, say that you are running off a DAW or an X32 or pick it, whatever someone's working with, and you're like, man, I've kind of squeezed every ounce of whatever you think, because there might always be more. Or maybe you're just ready to work with a console and you're upgrading. At what point do you think, or would you suggest to somebody, this is when you should think about maybe putting the money into upgrading your console or your workstation or whatever that looks like? Not necessarily the console, but just what steps you would take to kind of walk somebody through if they're ready for that step of upgrading.
Well, I think if they have something that's already working, the console, I think, comes later. Like somebody mentioned earlier, I can't remember who it was, but was talking about how the sound source has to be right, the microphones have to be right. If you're using a bunch of compromised mics or you don't have good instruments, it's like at that point, that's not the time to make a jump to a better mixing device. I don't think that's the point, to make sure all that stuff's right. And then once everything in that compartment's in line, then you can look at a console. And there's many reasons to go to a new, whether it's you're mixing on a DAW or mixing on a console, there's reasons to upgrade. And that's the need to have more inputs, or the need to have more outputs, or more configuration options, or, there's a lot of different reasons to make that move. But I think the other stuff needs to be in line first. If you've got a terrible vocal mic, it doesn't matter what console you're mixing on, it's not going to sound good because the mic's no good. Yeah, and it's easier to make a vocal sound good if it's a great vocal mic but a bad console, that's generally going to sound better than a terrible vocal mic and a great console.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome advice. And kind of talking to that too. So Greg, as I mentioned, Greg Backus is our team leader. He's over all the technology. So it's broadcast. We support all of our campuses here. Greg, someone did ask about, purchasing equipment, different things like that. How to get more money for your department. I don't necessarily want to hit like that, but what are the steps that you take, or do you require us to kind of bring to you? Okay, so we want a new console, or we've talked about needing a new console in one of our spaces. What do you need to present to your leadership to say, this is the benefit and why we need to purchase this, to kind of answer that question?
A lot of times the direction we end up going, it's more about long-term return on investment. So the approach that we typically take is what is good enough, but also what is, so we're not looking at breaking the bank or whatever. No, also because we're multi-site, as you guys know, and with 35, 50, 100 campuses or whatever, whoever gets the newest toy, everybody else wants the same thing down, and that chain behind it. So, as we look at it, as we look at equipment, we look at purchases, we look at what's going to get us, what's going to meet our current needs, but also give us the room to grow and give us the flexibility to adapt as technology advances, as the demands of the campus increase and all that. And so when it comes to presenting that, that's usually more how the approach I take when I'm talking with leadership is, hey, this is where we're at. These are the limitations that we currently have. This is what we'd like to do. This is where it can take us. Kind of present all those possibilities and present them with real numbers. I mean, I don't really ever go to them with, like fluff or, a built-in slush fund with it or whatever to try to squeeze other stuff in, but go with real numbers and present that and let them make the decision. There's always room for more. There's always bigger and there's always better, but it's the way we just look at it from our perspective is what is going to meet our needs and give us the flexibility for the future.
Yeah, that's good.
There's lots of directions you can go with that,
Yep. Yeah, I don't know if whoever asked that question, there's not like a magic, this is how to get more money for your department. I think the payoff of what I've told people with smaller churches is like, what's Russ saying? Russ is saying it's not necessarily the cost you're using, it's the tools you're using to put into it. The same as what Matt said. And, some people are like, I want to put all my money here or there, put it where it grows and really helps the vision of your church. Right now, if the mission and vision of your church isn't to dive into broadcast heavy when all this stuff's lifted, do not go spend tons of money on how to do that. Adam's talking about how they kind of are gearing up for that. And so that's where they're going to be intentional. So just be intentional, like what Greg's saying, being intentional about the leadership and having that dialogue between your leadership. I think that's the best thing. I know Greg's super open with us and leadership's open.
You also have to look at who's the operator. If you've got somebody that's a volunteer that is kind of the weekend warrior that doesn't really, they can push faders, but they don't really have a concept of kind of the science behind it. And that's one thing. If you've got somebody that's more, it's creative and it's just what's the aptitude of the operator is another piece of it. Because if you've got somebody that's a seasoned professional, well, you can give them a little bit more tools, and hopefully it's going to polish it up. But I think it's like Russ was saying, you can take a really good source with a lower end console and get a good product with it. But if you have a crappy source and that it doesn't sound good coming off the instrument, it doesn't matter how good a console you got. If the engineer, can't really get greatness out of something that doesn't start off sounding very good.
Yeah, well, one more thing is, for a church, it's a challenge too, because you're trying to be good stewards of your finances, and it might not be spending an extra $5,000 on this piece of gear compared to something else, but I mean, how many people could that take care of in your community, or what kind of work could that $5,000 do if it didn't go to buy a better piece of gear? And which always a good reason to look at gear based on its reliability over time. There's some things that do real well, for 3 or 4 years, but then require a lot of maintenance or don't keep working, where other companies make things that last for a really a long time. I mean, that's one of the great things about Yamaha is their long life, and they make products that and I know we're not trying to push any company or whatever, but they do make things that 10, 12 years down the road, it will continue to operate well, which makes it a great investment for a church.
Yeah, we've done some things even with AB and the top end gear with the blind test with trying to determine which equipment we wanted, and did some blind tests and put it out on Dropbox and said, which one do you like better, not knowing which one was which. And it's funny because I think most of us came back with the lesser one we thought sounded better. There's always the wife test too. Is my wife going to notice the difference between this console or that console and how it's
right?
There's that's the tough part of sitting in the seats that we sit in, is that I think we have ears that are tuned to the details, and we'll pick out stuff that probably 95% of the congregation will never pick up on. So that's another variable that kind of goes into it, is is this something that we know what it can do and we're kind of keen to that, or is this something that really is going to move the needle?
Yeah, that's great. Well, we've gone over an hour already, and before we wrap it up, I want to ask you guys if there's anything else, the guests that you want to share, or some tips or something we didn't hit on, anything like that. Kind of go down the list. Sam, is there anything you can think of that we didn't talk about, or that we had talked about previously and didn't hit?
No, I just want to thank everybody for hopping on, and especially all the guys kind of joining the panel. Like, everybody's super busy right now, especially in our line of work. So really just appreciate all of you, and willingness to share and just kind of share knowledge, share experience, and just make us, all better as a group. So thank you.
Yeah. Jack, you have anything else, man?
I don't think so. This has been awesome.
Where can people find you then, if they want to follow you, do anything like that, see what you're doing?
You can follow me on Instagram, Jack R. Nellis. Instagram's probably the best. I'm on Facebook. I haven't checked my Facebook in forever, so probably Instagram's the best. Or
cool, man.
Yeah,
very cool. Well, thanks for joining, bro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was awesome.
Yeah, man. Drew, do you have anything else, man? Where can people find your training videos, different things like that?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks so much for just taking your guys' time out of your day to be a part of this and join in. You can find a bunch of my blogs and tutorials at dbbaudio.com or on YouTube. If you just go search Drew Brashler or X32, you are bound to find me and any of my videos there. My girls actually decided that they wanted to join a room, so I've been able to commandeer one of their old rooms and set up a little video studio in here. So I'll be putting out some more videos on the X32 for free here shortly. But man, I just really want to mention that, spending money on gear versus having those conversations with your band, or spending that money on training for the audio engineer that's sitting behind the desk. I think that spending a little bit of money on, say, training for that guitarist or that bassist that has a bad tone, or those drum heads that need to be changed because they haven't been changed in 2 years, or just doing some more training for your audio engineer, I think that's going to go a really long way. When I'm spending money, one thing that I like to think about is what percentage of my congregation or what percentage of my audience is actually going to notice the difference between product A and product B. If it's only 5%, if it's only on the actual sound of it, like, I'm not going to go for that more expensive item. So that's what I would do. But one thing I'm super excited about with this whole coronavirus thing and the situation that we're in with this pandemic is imagine all the churches that weren't online and had no online presence, and now through this have an online presence, and how much more is that going to push God in our world in this age? I'm really excited about that. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, man. Russ, where can people go to get a hold of you if there's anyone who's interested in the products or anything like that? Where do they go to talk to you?
I can be reached at rlong@yamaha.com. And I'm happy to either help if I can or point somebody in the right direction if they have any questions. And I just want to say thanks for letting me be part of this. And one last piece of advice I want to offer people who are creating broadcast mixes is to make sure you reference them on a wide variety of formats. I think sometimes people create a broadcast mix in a control room and they only listen in a control room, and they don't remember the fact that most people consume web content with earbuds or on laptop speakers, and you just need to make sure your content's translating across the board in every possible medium. So just make sure you listen in a lot of different places. And thanks for letting me be part of this. It's really exciting, and it's exciting to get reconnected with you too after a decade. So I appreciate it.
I know, man. Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Like I said, Greg said, yeah, his name's Russ Long. Can you reach out? I was like, I know, Russ. I'm excited. So yeah, this was great, man. Thank you so much for being on this. It's good seeing you. Yeah, man. Adam, same, Mix U Central. How can we get a hold of you? Anything else you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I'm connected with, I think, a lot of you guys on Instagram. So hit me up on there. That's where I'm on there the most. Thanks, Matt, Sam, Greg, for putting this on. This is great. It's great to connect with you guys. Yeah, I think what Drew said is really cool. This is a really cool time for the Capital C Church to really push our way into the rest of the world. Like churches that have never streamed before, ever, or never thought they would ever stream, are now streaming and reaching tons of people for Jesus. And I think that's super, super cool. So It's an honor to be a part of it. It's an honor to be in the trenches with you guys. And yeah, give it your best.
Yeah, thanks so much, Adam. Appreciate it, man. Yeah. And then finally, Matt, thanks so much for joining, bro. How can we, where can people follow what you're doing and anything else?
Sure. It's at Matt Rifino on Instagram. And then I got my website, mattrafinomusicmixer.com. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm kind of the outsider here, so it's kind of cool to be welcomed in. I appreciate it. If I had anything to say to any younger guys or guys that are just starting, when I kind of switched from just doing records to doing records and broadcast, I wish I would have starting all my mixes with the lead vocal first. It's something that took me a while to get into doing, but if anyone can just start with that and then build around that, and your life will be a lot easier dealing with bleed and everything else. That'd be the one little piece of advice I could give. But thanks for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, definitely. Well, Matt, you we were geeking out a bit. I'm not gonna lie to you, we were geeking out a bit. Sam and I were talking. We're like, we got this dude from he wants to be a part. That's awesome.
Well, cool to kind of hear your guys' approach, because it's, some stuff is similar. Me being in the kind of pop and rock and country world, it's a bit different than what you guys are doing, because I'm doing different bands every day. But hearing all your different experiences with your different bands, we're all kind of fighting the same good fights, with audio.
Yeah, man. Well, I know you hit a lot of things that I think a lot of guys on the church side probably haven't thought about before in a new way to look at it. So the message was well received, and we really appreciate your time, man. We know your time's valuable, and in that it starts very early in the morning. So
yeah, I haven't been, our show's on hiatus. We don't have any music right now, and I'm blessed that they're paying me to stay at home right now and kind of stay in New York City. So I'm sitting here in my home studio, just mixing tracks from home. But yeah, I'm still getting up at 4:30, and that's actually late for me. So yeah, I'll be back. Hopefully I'll be back to New York City in my midnight call soon.
Yeah, man. Very cool. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I'm Matt Morgan. We also have the rest of our Life.Church team here. You can kind of see they'll wave a little bit. So we're always here to help. If there's anything we can do, reach out to any of us, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. And if anyone missed this today that was on your team that you wanted to maybe share this with, or you come across another church, it's like, man, I wish that they would have talked about broadcast or lighting. There's some people on YouTube who mentioned that, getting some other guys, and we actually did. We've talked lighting and audio now, broadcast. We talked all the things. So this will be on YouTube in like 10 minutes when we get done with it. So share the link. It's free. All the resources are free for you guys to use, and we'll do whatever we can to answer the questions still. And so I think Greg's typically left this open for about 5 or 10 minutes after we get done just to answer any more questions. But at this time, officially, thank you guys all for joining. All the guests, you guys are awesome. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules. I know you're probably actually more busy right now than what a typical work week would be like without coronavirus around. So thank you guys, and we'll see y'all next time and whatever the conversation lends itself to next week. We'll see y'all.
I killed the recording, so if anybody was hesitant to ask questions while it was recording, you can ask away.
Now we get the best questions, honestly, whenever these things get done. Whenever we wrap up, someone comes with a really good question and we talk for a little bit longer. So, oh, and we also have another game. If you've been watching this without your video on, now's the time to show yourself.
Man, that was some good talk. That was fun. Like,
yeah, that's amazing, man. Hey, like I was listening to you bros talk. It's amazing how long it takes to really put together a broadcast mix when you don't have broadcasts. You know, it takes about, I'm gonna say it took a couple years. You know, by the time you listen to this week, that week, this week, that week, got volunteers, got mix on your mix, you know, listen at it on the way home, take the long way home, listen to the web, you know, all these things. It takes a little time, you know, you just can't build this stuff overnight. So, you know, putting together a program where you can steward a broadcast room, and, you know, I think that's next on my list.
Yeah, for sure. What's up, Brian? Brian Poole's here. You look like you're busy working, but I know that, were you just mixing front of house a little bit ago?
Yeah, for you know, like 5 people, but
it's still
under
fun,
10,
right?
So it's good.
Yeah, they've been asking me to do some stuff like that here, and I'm like, how should I push it? Should you push it? Because there's just a few people in the room, but it's still fun.
Yeah,
kind of drives things on stage a little bit.
Lack of energy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Are there any other questions though that anyone had that we didn't hit in the chat and you want to voice it now?
Matt, I think that's a great point that you just made, is that, you know, you talk about if you're doing front of house while you're doing the record and all of that. Are you guys still doing front of house mixing? I know we are. We're doing a front of house mix, and then we also have someone in our broadcast room on another console doing that. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we've been doing it. We've done it for every type of experience we've been shooting. So Pastor Craig's done midweeks. We still run it there. He actually wants us to run it, which is interesting because he's sitting in front of the PA on a small stage, like 10 feet away from our front of house console area. And sometimes I know a lot of communicators, it can throw them off, right? Like you're sitting in front and they hear themselves after they speak. He wants it so he doesn't like blow his voice out and talk louder than he has to, or feel like he's being dynamic enough. We did, as an all staff, I think last week we did one, and it was like a lot of acoustic instruments. That one was rough. That was kind of hard, and they asked me to run front of house for that. Trying to get a decent level just for people on stage to feel what's happening in the room was kind of interesting, but we still do it. I think it's just to keep a good rhythm, and so that we can kind of get an idea of what's happening with everything. But like one of our staff members, she was going between the room and then Sam's office where we have the console, just to hear what it actually sounded like, you know. So I had to draw back a little bit more because everything was acoustic, and Sam's in a, you know, controlled environment. He can push all the sources, so it's a little different. That's where really your positives are going to be of having that, you know, dedicated space. But we've for sure been doing it, And if we've done the experiences and whatnot, it's ran at the level that we would run it if the room was full. So you know, a lot of people are doing different things, but I think Drew mentioned you guys were killing the PA, or you didn't use a lot of it.
Yeah, we use Avioms, old technology for our musicians for their monitoring, and that comes off of our front of house console. So the console itself has to be up, and we still staff it with a person to get some tonality and whatnot going, and mic pre-settings, everything like that. But we are not putting it out in the house. We have a really old PA, and it throws a lot of sound onto the stage. And so if we were running the PA, there would be a lot of bleed into the mics. And so it's a fun game to play. I see that somebody's asking about automation. On the Avid venue profiles, there's snapshot automation, which we save snapshot automation on our faders and mutes in between songs, so that when we have a specific song come up, we can just hit recall, and it will slowly move the faders with some crossfade time to dial in the mix for that next song that has a different vocalist. So that's the way we're using automation, but we've been doing that forever.
Yeah, it's cool. A lot of different ways to do things. A lot of different ways.
Hey guys, I gotta jump on another call. Great hanging with you all. Thanks.
Yeah,
guys.
Adam, great meeting you, man. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, I'll see you guys around. All right, take care.
Definitely. Well, I actually just got told that I have to go run front of house right now for a staff event that we're about to have. So I've got to jump off. I did not know I was doing that today until just now. So we'll shut it down. Say what?
At least you're at the office.
Yeah, seriously. I'm glad I came up here for that. But thank you guys again for joining so much. If you have topics that you might want to talk about next week, I think I don't know how long we'll continue to do the weekly things. But if you have another topic you want to talk about, shoot them our way, put them on YouTube or email us. My email is matt.morgan@life.church. So if you need any help or anything like that, feel free to reach out. But I think we'll end the call now. Yep. Thank you guys again. This was great. I loved this talk today. This was awesome.
It was good.
All right, guys.
We'll see you guys.
Thanks, fellas.
Have a great one. See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Drew.